As a part of ongoing course on basic signal processing for BTech, I am happy to present a topic which is very important in electrical engineering, that is to find the response of linear systems. I am Dhanesh Chikuru from Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham, Bangalore. Now, what is a system? A system consists of certain inputs which are coming and hitting the input side of the system, and it translates these inputs into certain outputs. In this case, we have M inputs and N outputs. Such a system is called an M input, N output system. Okay? We can identify so many systems around us. A human body can be treated as a system. We have a lot of inputs coming, visual information, sight, or visual information, audio information, and so on. And we take action upon this information, which is processed by our sensory system, and we act upon it. When we act upon it, there is an output from us. So human can be considered as a system. So you can classify system into many classes, but I'm not going into the details of this. Only the essential part, essential and most important classifications we'll discuss in this course. And as an example, I am happy to present an area or a system which I am researching upon, namely the radar system. A radar system is shown in this animation. It consists of a transmitting antenna which transmits electromagnetic waves. And these electromagnetic waves, when it travels to distant space, it hits different targets. In this case, this electromagnetic wave hit an aircraft. Okay? Now, when the electromagnetic waves hit the aircraft, part of the electromagnetic wave will be returned back to the location of transmitter. As you can see, the green waves are the waves which are returned back to the transmitter. Now, a receiver at the transmitter, location of the transmitter, will intercept the echo and process these echoes, or it does some signal processing on the echoes and will predict various parameters of the target. For example, the distance of the target from the location of the transmitter, the speed at which the target is moving, and so on. So as you know, such a system is deployed widely in airports to find various information about aircrafts which are landing and taking off. And this information is very valuable for air traffic controllers to control the air traffic in airports. And such a system is also used in military scenarios where the target is not a civilian aircraft, it is a fighter aircraft, an enemy fighter aircraft. And we will identify various the speed at which the fighter aircraft is moving, what direction it is moving, and so on. So such a system is a little bit complex. So our course deals with simple systems and fundamentals. So such a simple system is described here, where there is only one input and one output. Okay? X is the input, Y is the output of the system. Now, such a system can be called a linear system when it exhibits the property of additivity. Additivity means if you do an experiment, if with the input as x1 and if you measure the output as y1, at another point of time you give an input x2 and find an output y2. Okay, x2 and x1 need not be equal, it can be different. So y1 and y2 you will find it as it may or may not be equal. So you have two different experiments, x1 mapping into y1, x2 mapping into y2. Now suppose you combine this x1 and x2, that is x, the x will be x1 plus x2. Then if it's a linear system, output will be y1 plus y2. So this property is called additivity property. Now, for a system to be a linear system, it must also satisfy the property of scaling or homogeneity property. Scaling means you are multiplying. Suppose x produces y. If you multiply x with k, a scaling factor, the output will be k times y. So linear system must obey this property. So if you scale the input, output will be correspondingly scaled. Now, these two properties can be combined into one property called the principle of superposition. The property of superposition, which means that if you have an x1 which produces y1 and another point of time you have x2 which producing y2 by the system, then you combine it linearly. You multiply x1 with a factor k1, you multiply x2 with a factor k2 and give it as a new input at another point of time, that is x is equal to k1 x1 plus k2 x2, and the output y will be k1 y1 plus k2 y2. So this is called the principle of superposition. So linear combination of inputs at different points of time will be linear combination of the output with the same scaling factors. So this is called the principle of superposition. So in general, a linear system must obey the principle of superposition. Now, what's a nonlinear system? Indeed, nonlinear system will not obey the above properties. Okay. Now, examples of linear systems. In electrical engineering, we are familiar with a circuit called voltage divider. We give an input Y at so there are two resistances R1 and R2. If you give a voltage to this combination of R1 and R2 like this, so it's as V in, as you know that the current will be V in divided by R1 plus R2. Okay. So output will be V in divided by R1 plus R2 into R2. Okay. Therefore, output will be of the same shape as the input. Okay. But the amplitude will be smaller. So this is a very simple example of linear system. Now when you increase the input, what will happen? The output will be correspondingly increased. The scaling property is obeyed. When you have another input, you get another output. You combine the old input with the new input with certain scaling factors. You give it to this. You will get the output which is correspondingly scaled. So, in other words, if x1, so it obeys this principle of superposition. Therefore, this is a linear system. And you can prove that in general, all RLC networks are linear. As you can see, this is the system model of a transmission line. Okay, you can model your USB cable, that is USB cable, high-speed computing, traces, and so on with such a network. It has R, as you can see here, inductance L, capacitance, and a conductance. So this model is widely used to model high-speed transmission lines, such as high-speed traces in integrated circuits, USB cables, and so on, or network cables, and so on. So you can call such a cable or also as linear system, because it can be modeled as with RLC components. So therefore it is linear system. Now we must know what are nonlinear systems. So nonlinear system, I described earlier, it will not obey the property of superposition. Now, one of the simple example of nonlinear system is a diode circuit. You can see this is the representation of a diode, and this is a small diode circuit. Okay. Now, when you look at representation of diode, when you measure the current flowing through the diode versus the voltage versus current in a diode, the voltage at the terminals of the diode versus current passing through the diode. All electrical engineers know that you will get such a curve. You might have measured these characteristics in the laboratory. There is a forward region, there is a reverse region, where after a limit it will break down. In the forward region, the current will be very small for certain time and it suddenly increases. Okay? This is a classic example of a nonlinear system. Why? The question is why? We have to answer that. Now, you can see there are two small regions here in the forward bias region marked by this red part and in the reverse bias region. Okay? In this region, the current is not linear. For simplicity, let us represent it as a nonlinear current obeying this nonlinear equation. Okay? This is a nonlinear equation between voltage and current. Current flowing through the diode versus voltage V across the diode. Okay? I as a function of V will be a quadratic polynomial, P0 plus P1V plus P2 V square. By the way, in the linear region, that is far away from the knees here in the forward and reverse region, that is here, the P2 will be very small. Okay? Then I as a function of V will be retaining only the first two coefficients, P0 plus P1V. Therefore, it will be linear. So in this region, that is the knee region, in the forward bias part and the reverse bias part, you can represent the current passing through the diode by this equation, P0 plus P1V plus P2V square. So P2 is finite in this case. Now, imagine the case you are multiplying the V, the voltage across the diode, by a factor K. Now what will happen? The current passing through the diode will be P0 plus P1 K into V. In place of V, old V, we have K times the scaled V, K times V, plus P2 K square V square. Okay. Now, if you compare the I as a function of K times V, it is not equal to K into IV. Okay? It is not equal to K into IV. Naturally, this equation is not equal to K times IV. So we got an output which is not obeying the scaling property. So it disobeys the scaling property, especially in these two regions marked by the red color. Since it disobeys the scaling property of scaling, the diode circuits are in general are non-linear. However, indeed, there are linear regions also. If you only focus on certain regions within the characteristics, they can be considered linear. But in general, diode circuits are non-linear. Now you can find other examples of non-linear systems. A transistor amplifier is also a non-linear system. For small voltages, input voltages, so this is a transistor amplifier, BJT transistor amplifier. You are giving an input voltage, sine wave. Now for small amplitudes of the input sine wave, you will get an exact replica of the sine wave at the output, probably with some phase difference. But amplitude characteristics will be exactly same. That is, if you give a sine wave, you get a sine wave. On the other hand, if you start increasing the voltage, input voltage, then what happens? After a certain limit, there will be clipping of the signal at the output. So this is a non-linear system. So this property is described here, the clipping. So this is a non-linear system. And there are other reasons also to tell that why a amplifier, BJT amplifier which is shown here is non-linear, because there is this phase distortion. Okay? When you give an input signal, the second harmonic of this signal will be produced at large input voltages. So as a result, output will be distorted, as you can see here. So there are various factors which contribute to nonlinearity of systems. In this case, there is amplitude distortion due to clipping and phase distortion due to delay. This circuit, BJT amplifier, behaves like a nonlinear system. Okay? Because of this clipping, it disobeys the scaling property. Now, why are we studying Laplace transform in the context of analysis of linear system? That is one point which I want to emphasize. And by the way, what is Laplace transform? Laplace transform is an integral transform, just like Fourier transform, which we have studied. And this is Laplace. He was born in 1749 and he passed away at the age of 77 in 1827. He is a French man. Now, Laplace transform from a purely mathematical perspective, as you know, it helps us to solve integral and differential equations very easily. Okay? Basically, the integrals and differentials will be transformed into additions and subtractions. If you translate the integral differential equations into Laplace transforms. That is why Laplace transform is very much interested for system engineering, because RLC networks, for example, are very complex and it is easy to solve with Laplace transforms. So that is what is described here. Why Laplace transform? So Laplace transform can convert integral and differential equations into algebraic equations. So linear systems can be described using integral and differential equations. So therefore, Laplace transform is interesting to be applied to linear circuits. Now, time domain signals, that is the signals which interact with the system, they also have Laplace transforms. So we have the time domain signals which are inputs of the system, as we can represent in Laplace domain with the Laplace transform. Similarly, system also can be represented by Laplace transform. So the output can be written in terms of purely Laplace transform. Okay? So that is why Laplace transform is interesting for analysis of linear systems. That is why every signal processing course, basic signal processing course, we cannot avoid Laplace transforms. Now, Laplace and inverse Laplace transform. So, as I have told you, Laplace transform is an integral transform. If you give the time domain signal as the input to the transform, then output will be written as a variable in S. We will see in detail what is this S. So in order to get F as a function of S, which is the Laplace transform, you have to do an integral. You have to compute an integral. This integral is an infinite domain integral, 0 to infinity, e raised to minus st. You have to multiply this ft by e raised to minus st, ft dt. So this integral, what you get will be a function of S because of this S coming here, and this Fs will be called as Laplace transform. Once you have Fs, indeed you can convert Fs into Ft through inverse Laplace transform. Laplace inverse is F of S is equal to Ft. That is equal to 1 by 2 pi j integral 0 to infinity F of S e raised to st ds. So this is the inverse Laplace transform. So Laplace transform is unlike our baking oven. When you put things into baking oven, we get our cake, okay? But when cake is put back into, you cannot convert cake back into the wheat flour and so on, the ingredients of the cake, okay? So Laplace transform is not like that. So you can convert it back. Convert whatever you are getting in Fs, you can convert it back into Ft through inverse Laplace transform. That's the beauty of inverse Laplace transform and Laplace transform. Now the big question is there. What is this S? Now, in order to find what is this s, you must understand what is e raised to minus st. Now, this s is a complex variable. So, it can be represented by sigma plus j omega, right? A complex variable has a real part and an imaginary part. We call it the real part as sigma and imaginary part of j omega. So, when you do this, e raised to minus st becomes e raised to minus sigma t cos omega t minus j e raised to minus sigma t sin omega t. So, this is very, very interesting term, this e raised to minus st, because e raised to minus st has a real part which is changing in time. Okay, the amplitude is changing in time according to sigma, and it is oscillatory with frequency which is determined by omega because of the cos omega t. So, amplitude changing due to sigma, frequency according to omega. Imaginary part is having a 180-degree phase difference. 90-degree phase difference with a negative sign. So, it is sin omega t. Instead of cos, you have sin omega t. Amplitude is varying at the same way like real part. So, e raised to minus st is oscillatory in nature. Okay, generally oscillatory in nature. So, if you plot it, this e raised to minus st for different sigma, you will get these kind of graphs. For example, when sigma is 0, the real and imaginary part are purely sinusoidal signals. When on the other hand sigma is negative, sigma is positive, you get a decaying sinusoid. When sigma is positive, on the other hand, you have a growing sinusoid. So, the s will determine how the signal will behave. The e raised to minus st will behave. So, that is, so s is in general is a complex variable which has real and imaginary part. So, what is the difference between Laplace transform and Fourier transform? Fourier transform will not have, does not have this sigma, it has only j omega. And when you take Fourier transform, you go from minus infinity to infinity. So, that is the difference. So, in simple terms, the Fourier transform is defined through the imaginary axis, while the Laplace transform fs with s is equal to j omega plus sigma is defined in the whole complex plane. Now, this is our ultimate goal. We study Laplace transform for a purpose from the context of systems, because we want to use Laplace transform to determine the output given an input, an arbitrary input. Now, the algorithm or the method with which we follow to compute the output is given in this block diagram. Okay? In normal case, when you give a time domain signal to a system which is represented by its impulse response, the output will be computed with convolution. I will come to what is impulse response and so on later. So, for now, you just imagine that a system is represented by an equation as ht. So, in order to find yt, you have to do this computation. Yt is equal to ht and the star represent convolution. Okay, I will come to this in a moment. Now, if you apply Laplace transform, how you apply Laplace transform to compute the output? Because if you follow the first approach, that is purely in time domain, this blue part, you have to do this convolution in time domain, okay, which is quite cumbersome. It takes more time and it has more computation time required to compute this yt. Therefore, Laplace transform help us in a way where things are much simpler. What you need to do is you take the Laplace transform of input. So, when you take the Laplace transform of input, you get xt will be transformed into xs. And you have seen in the previous slide, there is an equation, an integral equation, infinite integral, which help you to find this xs. Similarly, system can also be transformed into the Laplace through Laplace transform, and you can find a factor, a parameter called h of s. Okay, this will be called transfer function, this h of s, transfer function of the system. So if you find the Laplace transform of impulse response of the system, you get transfer function of the system. So in order to find the output, what you do, you multiply the Laplace transform of input with the Laplace transform of output. Find the Laplace transform of output will be hs into hx. Now you apply an inverse Laplace transform and you can compute yt. So it is found that the second option is much faster than the first option. Okay, first option will be yt is computed directly by convolution. Second option is you multiply the Laplace transform of input with the Laplace transform of impulse response of the system to get Laplace transform of output, and inverse Laplace transform of output will give the output yt. So the second option is called frequency domain, and this first option is time domain analysis of the system. Now, the linear time invariant system, for clarity I have described here again, input signal and we have an output signal, we have an impulse response. This parameter is unique for different LTI systems, linear systems. So our goal is to find the output signal given the input signal in time domain. Now what is impulse response? Impulse response means you give impulse as the input to the LTI system. You can see this is the impulse. Okay? Impulse is a very ultra short pulse which you are giving with a certain amplitude, unity amplitude. You are giving as the input. Instead of xt, you have an impulse. And when you give this impulse, it passes through the LTI system to generate an output. That output will be called impulse response. Okay? As the name suggests, impulse response is the response of LTI system to the impulse. The HT will be called impulse response. Now, how can you visualize impulse? So this is the thin pulse approximation of impulse, which help you to view this impulse intuitively. Now consider a rectangular pulse at time t is equal to 0 with thickness t, the width t and amplitude a. Okay? We know in our class discussions, the Fourier transform of such a pulse is a sinc pulse. The amplitude spectrum is sinc pulse, right? Now, impulse can be approximated as a rectangular pulse with thickness or the width tending to 0. So when the t becomes closer and closer to 0, the rectangular pulse can be visualized as an impulse. Okay, that's the only way we can visualize impulse. Okay, now what happens when the thickness tends to 0? Now what happens? You see the Fourier transform of the rectangular pulse with width t, which is finite, will be minus 1 by t will be the first peak, first 0 in the left, 1 by t will be the first 0 on the right. There are other zeros as well, 2 by t, 3 by t and so on. This is a classic example of sinc pulse, which is a Fourier transform of a rectangular pulse. Now what happens when t tend to 0, t becoming 0 means the 1 by t goes to infinity. So when denominator tend to 0, 1 by t tend to infinity. That is why an arrow, this spectrum becomes this. Okay? So then you can imagine that impulse, it contains infinite amount of frequency on the right and infinite amount of frequency to the left with equal amplitude. Okay? That is the characteristics of an impulse in frequency domain. In time domain, impulse can be approximated as a rectangular pulse with width tending to 0. In frequency domain, the impulse is a flat curve which contains all kinds of frequencies, minus infinity to infinity. The reason why it is minus infinity to infinity is because you can imagine the sinc pulse with first peak, first zero, and the zeros tending to infinity. That's why you can approximate impulse with a flat spectrum. Now, the question is, what is the Laplace transform of impulse? Okay, we know now what is an impulse. How to find Laplace transform of impulse? In fact, we use the technique of the rectangular pulse to determine the Laplace, the approximation which we have seen in the previous slide, which is the impulse is approximated by a thin pulse. This technique is deployed to find the Laplace transform of impulse. As you can see here. Here, in general, we have a displaced thin rectangular pulse. This rectangular pulse starts from A, and it has a width epsilon, which is very small number indeed, and it is having a width epsilon, so the stopping point is A plus epsilon, and we assume that the height of the rectangle is rectangular pulse is 1 by epsilon. And if you follow the principle, the Laplace transform, if you plug in place of time domain signal, if you plug such a signal which is denoted by delta epsilon t minus a, the Laplace integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus st you can very easily find that you will arrive at this equation, e raised to minus as into 1 minus e raised to minus epsilon es by epsilon es. Now, when limit epsilon tend to 0, you apply limit. So, I am not going into the details of it, you can go through the slides. So, then you suddenly find that when delta epsilon tend to 0, you get Laplace transform as unity. So, the Laplace transform of impulse is unity. Therefore, Laplace transform of impulse is unity. Similarly, you can find Laplace transform of exponential function. What's an exponential function? An exponential function can grow exponentially or decay exponentially. You can see it is e raised to minus 2x is the violet colored line, and the green one is a growing exponential, e raised to 2x. Now you follow this basic principle of finding Laplace transform. You plug this e raised to minus alpha t, okay, fs will be integral 0 to infinity ft e raised to minus st dt, you plug it in direct and you get 1 by s plus alpha. So this is how you can solve Laplace transform of simple functions. You can use the integral directly and you will easily get simple expressions of various functions. Now, if you look at Laplace transform of exponential, it's a rational function of s, which means what is a rational function? It's the ratio of polynomials. Okay, polynomials in s. So, numerator you don't have a polynomial, the degree of the polynomial is 0. In the denominator, the degree of polynomial is 1. So, the highest power of s is 1. Therefore, in general, such ratio of polynomials in s is called rational function. So, Laplace transform of exponential is a rational function. Okay. Now, here are the Laplace transform of common functions. You can derive it very easily by plugging in these various ft's into the basic equation, and you will get various things. Of course, we have computed the Laplace transform of impulse and exponential. Okay, Laplace transform of impulse is 1, Laplace transform of s, e raised to at is 1 by s minus a. E raised to minus at will be s 1 by s plus a, of course. Similarly, you can find Laplace transform of sinusoidal signal as 1 by omega square plus s square. Now, here is the catch. We have to find the impulse response. We have to find use Laplace transform to determine system output for a given input. So the example which we consider is a LC low pass filter. Okay. So this is the LC low pass filter. Okay. So here is the inductance L, capacitance C. Now, if you want to find the impulse response of the low pass filter, what to do? Okay. We can use Laplace transform to find the impulse response of the system. As you know, impulse response is nothing but when you give impulse as the input. What is the output? Whatever you see at the output will be called impulse response. Okay. As a numerical example, I have considered L as 1 nanohenry and C as 1 picofarad, and you can plot this HT after we compute the impulse response for various L and C. Now, why do we do this? Of course, we have already seen that if you know the impulse response of the system, okay, system is LC circuit, we will be able to find the output YT. That's why we are going through this tedious exercise of finding the impulse response, because it helps us to compute the output YT. Now, before going into that, we must know what are the Laplace transforms of inductance and capacitance, because they constitute the building blocks of the system, LC. So we must know what is the Laplace transform of inductance and capacitance. So from first principles, which we have been studying from school days, we can write the voltage across the capacitance as 1 by capacitance value into integral T0 to infinity IT dt. Okay. So this is how the voltage. The T0 is the starting point at which we are interested to measure this T. Okay. The initial value. So initial value of this initial time is important. So this is the basic equation of inductance, capacitance. And similarly, voltage across inductance can be written as Vt is equal to L di by dt. Capacitance, if capacitance voltage can be determined by an integral, the voltage across the inductance can be determined by a differential derivative of current. Now, you can find the Laplace transform. You can do some lengthy exercise. If I can write Vt as a function of IT with this integral, I can find the Laplace transform of Vt. That's what I am trying to do. Laplace transform of Vt. In order to do this, we have to find the Laplace transform of integrals. Okay? Laplace transform of integrals. So if you do the Laplace transform of integrals, after some lengthy equation, you can find that Laplace transform of integral 0 to t f lambda d lambda is 1 by s fs. Generally, T0 is considered as 0. The starting time is always time t is equal to 0. So that is why it is 0 to t. So you will find it as Laplace transform of an integral is 1 by s fs. Fs is the quantity inside the integrand. So integrand, Laplace transform of integrand, Fs is the integrand, divided by s. So Laplace transform of an integral is Laplace transform of integrand by s. Okay. Similarly, Laplace transform of the derivative, okay, is s times Laplace transform of the quantity which we would like to find the derivative. So Laplace transform of s. So these are initial values, f0, 0 minus, determine the initial values of this. So you can apply these principles to determine the impulse response. So how do you determine it? The impulse response. So it is shown here. Now we cannot, so the basic method, traditional method is by solving this purely in time domain. As you see, purely in time domain is a difficult exercise, okay, which involves derivative for the integral, inductance, and an integral for capacitance. So we want to avoid that. what we do is we apply some basic principles. We transform this into Laplace domain. So since impulse is given as the input to the system, the Laplace transform of the input will be unity. We have already found that Laplace transform of impulse is unity. Now similarly you can prove that Laplace transform of inductance is L into S, okay, and Laplace transform of capacitance is 1 by Cs. So therefore you can find the output voltage will be VIS divided by Ls plus 1 by Cs into 1 by Cs. So therefore V0S by VIS will be called transfer function, and transfer function you will get as 1 divided by LC S square plus 1, which can be modified into 1 by LC divided by S square plus 1 by LC. Okay. Now in the book we find that we can derive easily ourselves also. Omega square by S square plus omega square will have inverse Laplace transform omega sine omega t ut. Ut is the unit step function. Okay, ut is the unit step function. So we see that the patterns, they are similar patterns. Here for our LC network we got an expression like this, 1 by LC by S square plus 1 by LC. We immediately see that our omega square is 1 by LC. Our omega is 1 by square root of LC. Therefore, we can readily write the inverse Laplace transform. HT is inverse Laplace transform of HS, as H of t is 1 by square root of LC sine 1 by square root of LC times t into ut. So this is the impulse response of LC filter, which is a sinusoid of certain amplitude. It continues oscillations from 0 because of this ut. Before 0 it is 0 because ut is 0 before 0. So you have a sine wave. So it is going to infinity, which is very interesting. An LC network has an impulse response going from 0 to infinity, ideally. Okay? It is following a sine wave. Now, having found the impulse response, we want to study this transfer function little bit in detail. Hs is equal to 1 by LC divided by S square plus 1 by LC. In order to do that, I have written this S square plus 1 by LC can be written as S plus JA into S minus JA. Naturally, at certain values of S, the denominator will become infinity. Okay, those values are the zeros of this S square plus 1 by LC, which is plus JA and minus JA, with A as 1 by square root of LC. So you get two places where it goes to infinity, 1 by square root of LC and minus 1 by square root of LC. And real part of S is here. So if the transfer function is, the bottom point is, the transfer function is a two-dimensional function. Okay, Hs depends on real part of S and imaginary part of S. Therefore, you need a 3D geometry to understand the transfer function. So if I plot the amplitude of Hs with x-axis as real part of S and y-axis as imaginary part of S, then you get a 3D graph or 3D plot. You can see that there are two peaks in our case at 1 by square root of LC and minus 1 by square root of LC, which is going to infinity. So these 2 points are called poles of the transfer function, where this transfer function goes to infinity. So this is a general view of LC low pass filter in frequency domain or Laplace domain. Now, our goal ultimately is to solve time domain convolution. Okay, for an LC network, we have L as 1 microfarad, H as 1 microhenry, and for an arbitrary input, we want to find output. In time domain convolution, we have to do the convolution, and I've already told convolution is represented by star symbol. So yt is ht convolved with xt. Okay, So it is basically an integral. The convolution is nothing but an integral minus infinity to t x of t minus tau h of tau d tau. Okay. Now we already derived the impulse response of the filter is, or the LC filter is 1 by square root of LC sine 1 by square root of LC times ut. Now this is our impulse response. We have already seen. And suppose our input is a pulse train as shown here. What will be the output? This is our question. How to apply this convolution to find the output, convolution integral to find the output. Okay. Now there is a tool called QUCS. You can Google it. In QUCS, if I use this, if I draw the circuit and if I give the rectangular pulse train here as input, you get the output here. Okay. When you do this, you can simulate the output as here, as shown here. So when you give a pulse train, the output will be completely different from what pulse train which you are giving. You get some oscillations. Okay. Some places the oscillations have small amplitude, and some places oscillations are large amplitude, and some places it has zeros. Now, what is the mathematical technique deployed in a circuit simulator such as QUCS? Okay, that is what the purpose of the course is. How to determine, suppose you don't have the tool or a simulator, how will you find in your computer, how will you reproduce the same output in your computer without a circuit simulator? Okay, that is the purpose of the discussion. Now, I am focusing on the convolution integral once again. Okay, yt is equal to ht convolved with xt, integral minus infinity to t x of t minus tau h of t tau d tau. This is the convolution integral. Okay, the impulse response usually has is 0 before time t is equal to 0. As a result, you will get the integral will transform into 0 to t x of t minus tau h of tau d tau. Okay, how to view this integral? That is the question here. Purpose of the slide is to understand in depth what is the geometrical interpretation of this integral. Okay, how can you integrate? How can you view this geometrically? Which is actually very beautiful. Okay, in a purely mathematical view, this is dry. But if you translate this mathematics into a story, this is really interesting. Okay, so the story goes like this. Suppose impulse response is a pulse like this orange pulse. Okay, you can derive, by the way, impulse response of various systems. Like we have derived already the LC filter impulse response as a sine wave. Similarly, you can derive. So for simplicity, I am assuming the impulse response is given as a rectangular pulse, this orange area. Okay, in the variable is tau. Now, input to the system is given by this triangle, the blue triangle. Okay. Now, how can you mathematically or geometrically interpret this integral? What you need? X of t minus tau is nothing but mirror image of x tau. Okay, when you mirror image this, it becomes this x of minus tau pushed or moved to time t. So please understand this. X of t minus tau is nothing but mirror image of x tau, which is this one, shifted to time t. So x of t minus tau, you can see, is the mirror image of x tau shifted to time tau. If so, this integral will be the integral of product of the mirror image of x tau shifted by time t and the h tau. So this is, so basically it's the product of this h tau here and the signal here. So product of this first one, product of first one and the last one, product of first one and the last one is called this one, and this one is called is useful in finding the convolution. Okay, product of the first one and the last one. So when you multiply these two and integrate in the common area, the common area is 0 to t, then you get whatever you are getting is the output at y is equal y at time t. So it's correspond basically the overlapping area. That's the lesson we learned. Okay, so this is a geometrical interpretation of this convolution integral. So please understand, I will repeat it once again. The convolution integral is nothing but product of the impulse response and is somewhat related to mirror image of the input shifted to time t, and you have to take the integral. So if you want to calculate yt at different time t, you have to keep on shifting the input along the positive axis, x-axis. Now practical implementation of time domain convolution. Okay, as you know, usually signals are sampled. So how do this integration become a summation? So you can prove that yt, which otherwise is defined in continuous time, if you sample the xt and ht, you're going to get samples like this, and the integral will be transformed into a summation. Okay, once you have this summation, you can easily implement this summation in a program. I have used C++ ITPP library to program this convolution. Very few steps are required to do the convolution. So basically you sample the signal, input signal, sample the impulse response, store the sampled input, sampled impulse response somewhere, and you do this summation, okay, with 4 loops. You will get it. Now I have compared my implementation with C++ with QUCS. The QUCS output is the dotted ones. Okay, the input is shown here, the pulses. Okay, and the continuous curves are my output. As you can see, closely matches. So time domain convolution can be easily implemented in a computer using summation. Thus we have solved the time domain convolution. Okay, now we have one more example. It's an RC filter. Instead of LC filter, I have an RC filter. The same principle. I first determine the transfer function. Again, voltage division. VIS is 1. You assume input is impulse. So the current IS which is going into the circuit is 1 divided by R plus 1 by CS. And HS is V0S by VIS, which is 1 by CS by R plus 1 by CS. When you do some more steps, you will get HS finally. HS will be 1 by RC divided by S plus 1 by RC. Okay. If you remember the LC circuit, the denominator polynomial was of second degree. However, in RC filter, the denominator polynomial is of first degree. The power of S is only 1. Okay. And you can easily find, because in the book you have it is derived e raised to minus at. If you have minus at, the Laplace transform 1 by S plus a. Therefore, this quantity Hs, inverse Laplace transform will be ht is equal to 1 by RC e raised to minus 1 by RC t. Now you can do the convolution like before very easily. I am assuming that my input is a pulse. Okay, this is the characteristics of my input. It's a rectangular pulse of amplitude 5 volt, width g, which is 0.2 second, R is 100k ohm and C is 1 microfarad. So my impulse response is Ht is equal to 1 by Rc e raised to minus alpha t, which is drawn here. The dotted line represents my impulse response, Ht. Now Xt is my pulse, okay. Actually it is a snapshot of the convolution in a video. I will show that video right now, and output is Yt. As I have told you, Yt is determined by pushing. In time domain convolution means shifting the input, mirror image of the input to different times and determining the integral as an overlapping area, which can be implemented in a computer using a summation. So the video is here. I will show that how this entire process looks like. So as you can see, the convolution in time domain is shown here. So rectangular pulse is moving, shifted at different times, and the red one is the output. So when you compute the integral as an overlapping area, you will get this output y. Okay? So this is convolutioning time domain. Mirror image of input at shifted to different times and finding the corresponding integral 0 to t. That is what is called convolutioning time domain. Okay. Now we will do the same exercise in frequency domain as well, so that we can compare convolution in time domain and frequency domain. Now in frequency domain, how you go ahead with the convolution? Okay. What you do is, as I have told you, Laplace transform of output will be Laplace transform of input times Laplace transform of the system. The Laplace transform of system I have already derived as 1 by Rc divided by S plus 1 by Rc. Now, you can use unit step functions to determine the pulse. The pulse is nothing but difference of two unit step functions. The second one shifted to a certain time. So this is a unit step function which is going to infinity. Pulse has an amplitude A, therefore A into ut will be going to infinity from 0. A into u of t minus g will be starting from g, okay, starting from g, this part is g, and it is going to infinity. And difference of these two unit step functions will be the pulse. So if I want to find the output for this pulse, I can view the input as difference between two unit step functions. Pulse can be written as difference of two unit step functions. Therefore, and unit step function as Laplace transform 1 by S. Okay, we can derive that. And also, when shifted unit step function, when any function is shifted by a factor g, u of t minus g, you can prove that the Laplace transform has to be multiplied by e raised to minus s of that time shift. So when the Laplace transform of time shift is, time shifted function will be e raised to minus s times the time shift and the old Laplace transform. That is what is. You can derive that. You can look into this later. Therefore, now I can, so please understand, our goal is to find the output given this pulse. What is the output given a pulse input? And we have solved this in time using time domain convolution. Now we are going to solve it using frequency domain convolution. For that we require Laplace transform of input. So VIT will be A times ut minus A of ut minus g, which is because the consequence of this differences. Now if you do Laplace transform of VIS, it is A by S minus A e raised to minus GS, because time shift correspond to multiplication in frequency domain by e raised to minus GS. Therefore, output will be Laplace transform of system, which is HS, times Laplace transform of input, which is we have computed as A into 1 by S minus A into e raised to minus GS into 1 by S. So this is Laplace transform of input. So output will be product of system transfer function, which is this one, this factor, and input Laplace. So you get an equation like this. Okay. So this equation easily becomes, you can write it in this fashion. Okay. A into 1 by RC divided by S into S plus 1 by RC minus 1 by RC e raised to minus GS S into S plus 1 by RC. Now this first factor can be factorized as 1 by S minus 1 by S plus A, where A is equal to 1 by RC. Okay, you can see this. The output is factorized. Each term is factorized. So now you can see that inverse Laplace transform of A divided by S plus 1 by A is inverse Laplace transform of 1 by S minus inverse Laplace transform of 1 by S plus A. Okay. So this factor it becomes ut minus e raised to minus at with A is equal to 1 by RC. Similarly, due to time shifting property of LT, when you multiply 1 by RC e raised to minus GS S into S plus 1 by RC, you are multiplying with this, it will be U of T minus G into minus E of minus of T minus G. Okay. So you can write very easily the output Laplace transform. We can find the inverse Laplace transform of the output V naught S very easily. Go to this and applying results 2 and 3 in 1, results 2 and 3 in 1, you will get V naught T is A into ut minus e raised to minus 1 by RC T minus U of T minus G plus e raised to minus RC T minus G. So this is the final expression of the inverse Laplace transform of output. So compared to time domain convolution, there is no integration at all. It is just multiplication and inverse Laplace transform. Okay, it's much simple. That is why I told you in the beginning, frequency domain convolution is much easier than time domain convolution. Time domain convolution is so beautiful to see at. The process of time domain convolution is very intuitive and very beautiful. However, the number of computation steps are more in time domain convolution. On the other hand, frequency domain convolution is just multiplication of Laplace transforms, the multiplication of input Laplace transform and system Laplace transform. So it is much easier. And then you have to do a final inverse Laplace transform. Okay? So you get this output voltage. Therefore, now we have the final expression here. We would like to plot it. Okay? As you see, there are various components inside the output. You have a unit step function, you have an exponential, a delayed unit step function, and delayed exponential function. Each of these factors can be plotted independently and added or subtracted to find the final output. Okay? For the sake of completeness, I have drawn the individual components. You can see here ut, okay, u of t minus g, which is a shifted unit step function. Unit step function, on the other hand, start from 0 to infinity. Shifted unit step function, and then you have exponential function, which is e raised to minus 1 by RC time t, and the shifted exponential function. So you have shifted exponential function, shifted unit step function, and exponential function. So when you add or subtract all this together, you get the final output. Okay, the final output. Without A, the scaling is, so when you multiply by A, you get this curve. Okay. Hence, time domain and frequency domain convolution is same. If you recall, in time domain convolution also, we got the same result. Yeah, we got the same result with time domain convolution, which was seen by the video also. So time domain convolution also generated the same output. So this finishes this lecture, and what we have seen how to find the output of a system, linear system, given an input. We have examined two different ways. One is time domain convolution and the other one is frequency domain convolution. And we have seen that time domain convolution and frequency domain convolution yield the same results. On the other hand, frequency domain convolution is much easier. The computation steps are much smaller. So frequency domain convolution is faster. On the other hand, time domain convolution is very beautiful to see, especially with the animation. And I will show the time domain convolution once again. Yes, this is the time domain convolution. So which is very, very intuitive and very beautiful to see, but takes more computation steps. Okay, as the pulse moves, the integral will be keep on changing, and you see, you get what you get when you do the integration at different time shifts is the final output. Okay. So this finishes this lecture, and thank you for listening. Thank you.